Without support, children may guess words, they may develop bad habits, they may become frustrated or disengaged. Because don't forget to subscribe. Hi, lovelies. Good day and welcome. It's been a while, and here is yours truly, Mujibata Korede. There's something super important that I want us to talk about today, and that is the popular saying that children learn to read by reading. Do you think that is enough? Many people assume reading improves automatically with exposure. When you expose children to books, texts, library, their reading improves automatically. Let me ask you a few questions. Can you learn to ride a bike by just reading a manual? Or can your children learn to drive a car by just watching or sitting beside you or behind you and watching you drive, or just by reading the manual? Or can you or your children learn swimming by just studying the physics of buoyancy and the mechanics of strokes all day on dry land, on plain dry land? Of course not. You have to get on the bike, wobble and fall. You have to get behind the wheel, like truly driving to learn how to drive. And of course, you don't try to learn swimming until you are in the water. Reading is similar. So you can learn phonics all day, sounding, blending, segmentation, learning all the tricky words. You can do all of that all day. But the click happens in the seat of a book. The statement that children learn to read by reading, what it actually means is that reading is a skill developed through practice. Through practice, reading over and over again, your children develop the skill of reading, your student develop the skill of reading. Now, the more the children read, the more automatic word recognition improves. Word becomes automatic after multiple meaningful exposure. They've seen the word or the text, they read it, they hear you read it, they use it in sentences, they look for the meaning, they look for the synonyms, they look for the antonyms. So they check it out in magazines and newspapers. Multiple exposures, between 4 and 14 times exposure. So automatic word recognition improves. They don't have to go about sounding or blending or decoding words again, because they've seen the words so many times, they are exposed to it, they know how it sounds, they know how you read them, and it becomes automatic. So they recognize the words automatically. Then fluency develops. The more children read, the more fluency develops. Each of the exposure that children are having strengthen sound symbol connection. Then, of course, when children read more, confidence increases. Reading is like a muscle, it grows with you. So, the more you use it, the more you practice, carry, do stuff, then the more it grows. Why do you think practice matters? It builds fluency, like the speed, accuracy, and with the right expression. It strengthens word recognition. They see the words over and over again, with the exposure, they recognize their words automatically. And of course, it expands vocabulary through context. They learn new words, more words, then they can use analogy, the knowledge or the skills they have in pronouncing a particular word. They can use that knowledge, they can apply that knowledge in pronouncing another word. They can use the knowledge of cat to read pat and rat and mat and so on and so forth. Reading practice improves comprehension over time. When you read a text, the focus can be on just reading the text. But when you read again, then you get to understand what the text was actually saying. But there are limitations. Reading alone is not enough. Just give them the books. Once they are exposed to the books, they can read, they will read automatically. No, 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 no. I disagree. I beg to disagree. So the limitations here are reading alone is not enough. Struggling readers cannot learn just by reading more and more. When those words are too difficult, or they may even become bored because the words are simple. So practice without guidance can reinforce errors. So we don't want our children to make errors. That is why they need guidance. It's about explicit instruction. So children need to be taught how to read. Yes, you heard me. Children need to be taught how to read. Some children can pick up reading automatically, but let me tell you, they need guidance, they need how to They need to learn how to read. You need to teach them the right way to read. And here are key components of reading. Based on the science of reading, there are five key components which are popularly called the big five of reading. So the first one is the phonemic awareness, ability to understand and manipulate individual sounds, the smallest units of sound, which is phoneme. Then phonics, decoding skills, vocabulary, more words, more vocabulary. Then fluency, the smoothness, the rate, the expression. Then comprehension, which is the goal of reading. And I need to just tell you this, like the Foundation Phonics program that we have provides these key components. So we can talk more about that later. Children need to be guided because reading should be supported. It should be intentional. Like you have to be intentional about guiding your children to read. Then you have to support them. And let me tell you, it has to be matched to the level, to their level. So, and here are a few examples that I think will be helpful for you. Decodable text for beginners, you have to get them for your children. Then they have to practice repeated reading. When they read the first time, and they read the second time and the third time, so it will improve their reading, their fluency, then their understanding comprehension too will also increase. Guided oral reading is also very important. And as parents and teachers, you need to provide feedback. Don't leave any mistake without correcting it. If there's anything I want you to take away from this video, please know that children learn to read by reading with instruction and support. So practice and teaching equals success. So when they practice reading, you need to guide them. Let them read, listen, let them read aloud, then you listen, you make correction. They practice reading, then you teach them how to read. Equals success. Not either or, okay, is that you just practice. So here are practice tips for you, parents and teachers. Make sure you provide daily reading time, whether in the morning or midday or before bedtime. Provide a daily reading time, even if it is 15 minutes or 30 minutes. This is super, and make it consistent. Then choose appropriate level text for your child. Then use decodable books for early readers. When your children are still young, you can use decodable books because those textbooks are in line with the sound, the initial sounds of the alphabet, like the a, b, k. So there are like the pat and the cat, Zach the rat, those decodable books like that. Then listen to children read aloud. Whenever they are reading, make sure you listen to them and you make correction when necessary. Then correct gently and guide, not shouting at them, not, bullying them, because some parents bully their children when they are not reading correctly or when they don't know how to read. So correct gently and guide them. Then encourage rereading for fluency. Don't assume that once they read one time, they already understood it or they already knew what they were, so they don't need to read over and over again. Encourage them to reread for fluency. This is super important. When they read, let's say the first time they read a particular paragraph or a particular passage, they might spend maybe like 8 minutes there. By the time they read the second time, they become more fluent and they become faster. They can spend less time. So by the time they read the third time and the fourth time, you see it to be like automatic reading for them. And here are a few misconceptions about reading that we need to talk about, like come here, that we need to talk about. Just expose children to books, they will figure it out. No, this is a wrong misconception. Of course, the children need to be in a literacy rich environment, but that is not enough. Once you expose them to books, you can't leave them to figure it out. Then second misconception is pictures will help them guess words. Pictures are important, especially at early stage when you are introducing the initial sound or the ending sound or the middle sound. Then you want to let them know, like, this is the letter. For example, you can have an apple. A child who is not aware of the sound that the letter A makes, so but the child knows apple. So when the child sees apple, then what sound do you hear at the beginning of apple? Ah, then ah. Over time, you take away the picture. So pictures will help them guess words. Reading is not learned through guessing or pictures. You can use it at the initial stage, but my dear, don't rely on that. Then the third misconception is struggling readers just need more reading time. A lot of us make this mistake. That is totally wrong. More reading alone does not fix struggling readers. Even you have your child repeat 3, 4 times, like you have them repeat a class 3, 4 times, it will not solve the problem if you don't provide the necessary guidance. So the third misconception is struggling readers just need more time, more reading time. More reading time alone does not fix struggling readers. Even if you have your child to repeat a class 3, 4 times, it will still not fix struggling readers. You replace all these misconceptions with evidence based practices, which is phonics instruction. My dear, support your children. Don't rely on these misconceptions, they are so wrong. Like the examples that we gave at the beginning of this video, learning to read is like learning to drive. You don't learn to drive by just driving randomly or by just seeing car or by just looking at your mom and dad drive. You need instruction, you need rules, you need guidance, you need the skill of blending, the skill of segmentation, knowing and learning the tricky words, giving children feedback on what they need to do, what needs to be corrected, how they need to read properly. Instruction teaches the skill, practice makes it automatic, and that improves fluency, so which is the goal. But the joy of reading itself is the engine. So if a child learns the mechanics but hates books, we've lost. The reason why we learn to read by reading is because the reward for reading is the story itself, like getting to know what the text is saying. But if you are just reading without knowing anything about what we are reading, we become frustrated, we become disengaged. So, my dear teachers, my dear parents, let us support our children, encourage them to practice reading with guidance. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video. Struggling leaders, struggling